Tony Cox says that Black love has been hugely affected by toxic feminist movements. The demasculation of the Black man, a specific path to destroy Black men from childhood, as described in the book The Conspiracy to Destroy Black Boys by Jawanza Kunjufu in 1985.
Right. Okay. That's interesting.
I'm not personally aware of that book, and I think the toxic.
What do you think that Black love has been destroyed by Black feminism? Okay. No fancy setup for me today, guys. Hello, thank you for joining us. If you are with us, let's do some sharing.
It's sure.
How's your day been, babes?
Good. They're at Papa's today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you're not here. He's out raving, so you're not going to hear me cussing anybody today at home, because they're all out.
Right.
So they're going to leave me alone today. Let me share. Where are we?
Well, we've got the gentlemen's waiting in the weight room.
Mm-hmm.
Today we're going to be talking about intergenerational cycles,
mm-hmm.
or intergenerational trauma.
Mm-hmm.
What's your understanding of this topic, Nat?
From what I'm talking about different cycles that you experience in your family. So it could be your great grandmother, and kind of what would be classed as traumatic experiences, and that kind of being brought down into the generations after. So the same kind of mindset. It's not just the trauma, but it's how it's dealt with in the same sort of way, dealt with in a way that it's not dealt with, so that it keeps getting passed down from generation to generation.
Yeah. Are there any clear examples that you think you've experienced, or that you'd be able to get into when we get into the show, or nothing that you can put your finger on?
Do you know what? It's funny. Nothing that I can really pick up on like that. But I wonder if it started with me. If there was anything that started here, if that makes sense.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So I do wonder, I wonder what's going to happen, because there's things that I didn't really see when I grew up. I didn't really see anything that felt kind of out of the ordinary. It felt very, very normal and, cool. I didn't really see anything. If anything was going wrong, I never was privy to it. Right. So, but obviously,
as we've learned, energy is real.
Yeah, energy is real.
Privy to it physically. You pick something up, but we'll delve into that. We're going to be doing this show with Kwame Opoku. He's done our men's mental health show with us before. Really inspirational. Looking forward to picking his brain on this. How I've done it today is just like different topics that we've selected throughout the couple of weeks that we've been doing the research, and we're going to just ask him questions around the topics that we've selected, but they're all related to feedback. It's all related to the intergenerational trauma, the topic that we are discussing today. So without further ado, let's admit this gentleman, because we are already late. Hello. Oh, he's connected to Oh, can you hear us? Hi, Kwame.
Evening.
How are you?
Hello.
I'm well, thank you. Oh, sorry. Hold on a sec. Just listen to an audio book.
Oh.
Okay. Sorry to have kept you waiting, sir.
I heard technical difficulties at play. It's all good.
I don't understand. The computer would work fine all day.
Yeah.
I to get ready for No Bravado, and I come back and then this isn't responding, this isn't working, and it's just like, well, why?
Yeah.
Why are you doing this? And then it puts you under pressure.
Of course.
Let me just turn this down. It puts you under pressure because I know you're waiting. We are usually on time. So, yeah, then you start panicking, which then makes things seem like it's been going on for an eternity, you know?
Yeah.
But we are here.
Woosa, woosa, woosa.
Yeah. So today's topic is about intergenerational trauma. That we wanted to pick your brain and find out your take on it.
Yeah.
So what we've done is we've done like a little slideshow of different memes and topics that we've put in the group. Because as you know, we've got something called a No Bravado group.
Yeah.
And we put topic debates in there all the time and then pick out the best ones and what our members have said around that particular topic.
Yeah.
So we've got one topic where we put some research in to see what people would come back with, and then different little talking points that we just wanted to ask you questions to see what your understanding is around certain things, and maybe share some experiences that we've had, that I've had anyway personally, or that we've had, to see what your take is around it.
Okay.
Okay?
I'll try my best, yeah.
All right. All right. So here we go. Today I'm going to share my screen and let's see if it works. It shouldn't be seen.
Oh, no problems today. First time.
Smooth.
I'm going to do the slideshow. Let's see if it works, because you guys shouldn't be seeing the slideshow.
Okay.
All the shouldn't be seeing that part. But yeah. So this is our little, we done a little thumbnail for you, Kwame. Do you like it?
Thank you very much. A little add on to the side. That's okay.
Yeah. Oh dear. All right. So this was a video. Hopefully, this was a video that Michelle, our producer, she got this from Facebook, Red Table Talk, where Bobby Brown speaks about how he believes his drug abuse affected his children. So I wanted to just play 3 minutes of this.
Okay.
Let me know if you can hear it.
Yeah.
And then we discuss. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Can you hear it?
No, it's quite low. No, I can't hear it.
Can't hear it?
No.
Okay. Let me try something else and see if that works. Hang on. Could you hear the audio on that, guys?
It's just little bits of it.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, it's worked in the past. I don't know why it doesn't want to work now. Let's try. Let's try this. Try one last third is lucky attempt. If not, then I'll just try and explain the bit that I.
Okay.
Any better?
Not really.
Okay.
No.
All right, never mind. We won't do videos because to our people sound. It worked the first time and then didn't want to work again. Right. So
what was he saying? Yeah.
Basically, Bobby Brown was just the clip that I took out was he explaining that his daughter, Bobby Christina, she died of a drug overdose, reminiscent to the way her mother died, more or less identical to the way that her mother died. And then his son recently died, same thing, drug abuse.
Yeah.
He says in this clip that he feels guilty because he feels that although his son wasn't a drug addict, he was an experimenter. But he feels that his role with drugs in his life caused his son to feel like it's okay to dabble because my dad did it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then Jada Pinkett's mum, she said that when she got pregnant at 17, and you don't realize how much responsibility is to have a child,
Yeah.
and that every decision that you make impacts on your child's life. But if you have a child that's 17, you're not really aware of all of the impacts that can actually take place. And then you're starting cycles that you're not even aware that you're starting. And she mentioned that she got clean in that. So I'd have to do more research, but from what I've gathered, maybe Jada Pinkett's mum used to take drugs as well, because she said, when I got clean. So that's basically what that video was saying. So I wanted to discuss that, and then we'll move on to the other topics that we as well. But what's your thoughts around that, Kwame?
There's so many aspects to it, because I don't always I think it's easy to say 1 + 1 = 2 in relation to what children are exposed to and then what they might do. So it's not like a straight line that just because a child sees something that the parents are doing means that they will do it themselves, because there are a lot of people who have let's say, who have challenging backgrounds, who come from quote unquote healthy 2-parent families. Right. So it's not always, but it's your opening up you kind of normalizing aspects, because children also are very much susceptible to what they see around them. Right. So it's the fact that if the children are around parents doing certain things, it normalizes the attitudes to it. And also the parents are using drugs because potentially they can't cope with their own emotional difficulties in some shape or form. So then then the question then becomes, what capacity and capability do they have to also manage their children's emotions well, in a healthy way?
Right.
So the cycle is the emotional availability, the ability to, let's say, help the children regulate their own emotions. If they are struggling to do that for themselves, they can't realistically do it well for their own kids. So therefore, the kids are also not having healthy coping skills to learn from, or also to kind of internalize for themselves as well. So it's that aspect of it as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Anything you want to say around that now?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I know. I think her mum was an addict. Yeah. I heard before as well. So I wasn't sure when she got clean, but I knew that Jada did witness some of that.
And also with Jada's mum saying she got pregnant at 17, it's also about what support system does she have around her.
Right.
So it's, again, that's why it's not always to say just because it's a young parent doesn't mean that the outcomes are going to be quote unquote bad. But it also is about what was her support network in terms of maybe her own parents. I don't know, let's say Jada's mum's parents situation. So it's like, what support does she have around her, whether it's friends, whether it's family, to help her manage that difficult transition into becoming a young parent. So there's that aspect of it as well.
Okay, so one of the questions that I have is, do you think that, because I've been trying to find my words around it. I mean, I haven't done enough research, but I have thoughts and feelings around where these behaviors kind of stem from. Do you think that, like, not even talking about Jada's mum, just generally people who, do you think that it's something that is passed on from DNA? Do you think it's something that's passed on from our unique trauma, or what do you think? Do you think it's do you think there's a spiritual aspect to it, where if grandma has a pattern, mum's going to have a pattern? And like you said earlier, not necessarily if a child sees parents doing something that they're necessarily going to then start doing it. But is there something that is beyond normal thoughts that we can analyze that cause us to pick up cycles, do you think?
The cycles, to be honest with you, I guess I'll stay with my therapist hat on, and we talk about things happening unconsciously.
Right.
So there's things that we do explicitly, things that we do unconsciously.
Right.
The patterns is really about what is potentially normalized within a family system. So there's stuff around family system constellations. So you might see generations of people having children, boys, and let's say boys fathering children at a young age, or girls having kids at a young age, not because it's kind of prescribed, but just because of behaviors. Is that they may see a lot of they may maybe sexualize at a young age. They may then start having sex at a young age. They may have unhealthy ideas around relationships from a very young age. So what is seen as a healthy mindset, healthy behaviors, is totally skewed. And then we know that some young people as well either are very disregarding of maybe sexual health because of trauma as well. People's risk-taking behaviors are kind of come into play as well. For some people, is the idea of basically wanting love, wanting something for themselves. So there's all these behaviors and mindsets that come into play when you're in a unhealthy family system or social environment. So I think those are the big influences, because you kind of see that on average, when people are in more stable, healthy social environments, you see certain trends don't exist in the same way. So that's what I'll say to that, because there's a lot of things around let's say social economic factors, put it that way. And that has a massive play, because when you look at certain demographics and you see the wealth, you see the, let's say, the poverty or lack of poverty, that creates a certain mindset and culture within a particular system. So obviously not everyone kind of comes out the same way, but on average, you find that there are let's say less teenage pregnancies in certain social environments. There is you know what I mean, so there's less addictions, there's less drug taking and so forth. So within reason, children might experiment, but the addiction can be very much about emotional regulation.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I think the reason I went for the Bobby Brown video, and specifically Bobby Christina, is because she died in the exact same way as her mum. So I'm thinking, okay, you got the social aspects of it and how, you know, statistically things will happen based on, but for someone to die in the exact same way. Yeah,
it's spooky. I know it can easy to say, was it something almost beyond supernatural, something spiritual,
right?
And that's one of those things, is like, coincidence. Is it too much to be a coincidence? I don't know. But also she came from a very chaotic family system, with the mum, the dad, both of them. Even Bobby Brown, even now you see him, you're thinking, how is he doing? Particularly with his son and his daughter both died and his wife died in tragic consequences. Also his own personal background, and kind of like what led him to become the addict that he was in the first place. So that's what comes up for me personally.
We've got some comments. Tony Cox says, genetically passed down trauma, good family support networks can affect a young adult development mentally. Lack of those support systems lead to dysfunction in many cases. Strong family networks support strong morals normally. There are exceptions, of course.
So there is protective factors, which is what Tony is talking about as well. So and then factors that obviously make people more susceptible to outcomes around mental health and physical health. So protective factors are family, kind of community, schools, social, kind of your social environment. So there's all these things that if you have a lot of these things in place, you are more likely to come out with a better life outcome. And then we have things like ACEs, which is adverse childhood experiences, the more you have, the more mental and physical health, worse outcomes come into play as well. And there is emerging science of epigenetics as well, which I think was what Tony was talking about. And epigenetics is almost the DNA being encoded or being changed by trauma from the generations, but also makes you more susceptible to suffering from the effects of trauma. So that's where almost vicarious trauma also comes into play, in terms of if you've got that epigenetic changes, and then you're more around trauma, poverty, even stuff we see on social media. The question is then, are you more likely to become traumatized, or easier for you to become traumatized, because it's almost like it's waiting for that gene expression, is waiting for a stressor to bring it out of you.
Right.
Yeah, and that's what Michelle was saying as well, that there's been research that suggests trauma can actually affect DNA and be passed on. Research done on descendants of Irish Americans who fled Ireland due to famine. She was talking about, and she also mentioned Peaches Geldof died in the exact same way as her mum, also drug overdose in front of the child.
And the epigenetics part of it is work that's been done by people like Dr. Joy DeGruy, who did post-traumatic slavery syndrome.
So, which brings me on to, with the post-traumatic slave syndrome, because I feel like, I've said this a few times, that I think that, all right, the Jews went through the Holocaust, and I don't know what their unique trauma is. But for us, I feel like there is definitely cycles that are continued from slavery that affect us today. I remembered, Natalie, your camera's gone.
Is it gone? Hold on.
There you go. And you're on mute. Okay, there you go. I remember reading the Willie Lynch theory and understanding how the fear was placed into us so that we would conform in order to take the duties on. And then, of course, the separation between the black man and the black woman, and all of the trauma that took place. I mean, we'd be here forever if I went and listed all of that we went through. But then I strongly believe, I mean, I have no facts behind this, but I strongly believe that some of the conditions that we experience today is heavily linked to the DNA trauma that we have been passed down from our parents, and so on and so forth. And I just wanted to see what your take was on that. I mean, have you done any research about that, hard facts around that?
No, I haven't done any research. I mean, the information sheet that I did was more putting intergenerational trauma into a more contemporary context, which is the Windrush generation. But from what you were saying, to be honest with you, I don't know why people want to debate it. It's not really, it's not something that it needs to be debated about, how the impact of slavery would have passed down either through epigenetics or through behavior, because it was a certain amount of survival strategy. And the survival strategy, and the danger of survival strategy, is that it becomes stuck. So the things that people did to deal with an abnormally stressful situation over time becomes normalized. There's a American author, Resma, I've forgotten his name, Resma something, but he's got a book called My Grandmother's Hands. And he kind of adds on to the idea around intergenerational trauma in terms of having to heal through the body. But the biggest thing is the fact that trauma is apart from being stuck in the body, it becomes normalized almost in people as culture. So so if it's so he kind of describe it as trauma in the person, if it's not dealt with, becomes a personality trait.
Right. Makes sense. Yeah.
Okay,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And this is why it's worth debating, because
Yeah.
you just taught us something that we don't know.
So it's so in the person, it might be seen as a personality trait. In the let me just actually pull it up, because I'm just it was a real powerful quote he did. So he says, trauma in a person decontextualized over time looks like personality. Trauma in a family decontextualized over time looks like family traits.
Right.
Trauma in a people decontextualized over time looks like culture.
Right.
So
makes sense.
So much sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So the danger is the fact that when things go back a long way, it becomes normalized, and then it just becomes just as how we are. These are the things that we do. So when you then try to challenge it, it feels like it's you're actually doing something abnormal, because the person's like, but this is how our people do things now. This is how we've always done it. Not thinking back about where was the start point for this to become normal.
Yeah.
Ooh, sorry, that's my fault.
That's okay. So the thing around intergenerational, particularly intergenerational trauma, is what becomes normalized, what becomes seen as, that's just how things are. So therefore, it becomes hard to challenge and say, actually, we need to look at this. This is not healthy. This is not healthy. So so your thing around over the years, of course, there's things that people did to survive. If you're in an environment where your children can be taken away from you and sold at any moment now, the question is, how much do you allow yourself to really bond with them and attach to them? If you don't have the so that's always fear. So there's always fear that you're going to be separated, you're going to be sold, they're going to be taken away.
Right.
If you go over generations where you're never allowed to have a connected family bonding system, how can you replicate it going forward over time?
Yeah.
Right.
So a lot of things were interrupted, and also a lot of things were kind of conditioning was created. So the conditioning of people just not being used to being in a healthy system. And then also the conditioning is the fact is that you can't almost relax and be totally connected to your relationship, because at any moment now you're going to be separated. You could be separated, you could be killed, you could so you just don't know. So when things are interrupted and there's no work done to repair it, things get stuck in the way that they've always been.
Okay, makes sense.
So so that's the thing is that let's say if people look at modern day slavery now, when people are rescued from from being, they're called human trafficking and so forth, they'll get a suite of services given to them. There might be social services, legal, this, that, and so forth, because there's a recognition that you need a certain amount of support around the person to help them to deal with what they've been through. Right. So if you kind of compare that to what happened with us, what happened post slavery, what happened post independence from different countries, people just got on with it.
Yeah.
But there was no process of evaluating what had transpired and what needed to be done to heal individuals, communities, the countries that were severely impacted.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a lot of food for thought. And this is why we wanted to talk about this, because I could talk about very small things that I have noticed in my family.
Yeah.
For instance, I'll talk about me and my mum. My mum's dad left to go to live in America so that he could make a better life.
Yeah.
And send money back to the family in Barbados.
Yeah.
And then my dad did exactly the same thing. He left when I was 4, and went to America to get a better life. But he didn't send much back for me. But that cycle, there's so many similarities of things that had happened in her life with her her family and things that subsequently happened with me, down to my father having an affair with one of her friends. I then went out with a guy that done exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
So it's to be just trying to connect the dots. And if you can see the patterns, how to heal them, I guess positively is the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Am I making sense?
No, you are.
Okay.
I think it is the fractures within relationships are massive, particularly on children, which was why I was interested about to do it from using like the Windrush generation era.
Yeah, explain to us what you mean by this.
Yeah, so the information sheet I did was I kind of titled it the impact of childhood trauma on immigrant communities, but specifically I was thinking about Africans and African Caribbean communities, because Windrush has obviously Windrush Day is coming up soon. There's always a conversation about the contributions of Windrush, the fight, the struggle of Windrush immigrants. But the big thing that a lot of people never really spoke about was the impact on families, the children that were left behind in the various countries,
right? Yeah.
And whether they came back and rejoined after a few months, after a few years, sometimes 5 years, 7 years. There's a lot of family fractures between fathers leaving or mothers leaving and then coming to join in and so forth. But the impact on children was massive because a lot of children were separated from their parents. They were then raised by grandparents and then came over to the UK. And then they might have had, siblings that sometimes weren't even aware of them being, or they were just a figure. Oh, you've got an older brother or sister, but they didn't have a relationship with them.
Yeah.
Obviously now you've got FaceTime and you've got WhatsApp video calls, but back in the day, letters, maybe phone calls, or whatever it is. So there's very little ways of building a relationship with those children or siblings. Yeah. And then parents also sometimes separated, got new families. So there's a lot of fractures that happened. And then when they came over, there was that kind of hostile environment, whether, because of the social climate at the time, but also within families, not everybody was welcomed in the same way. If you've come over and you've got a step parent, what was that relationship like? Sometimes people are thrown into becoming a surrogate parent. I mean, they hadn't seen their parents maybe for how many years. They come over thinking that they're going to be loved and given, TLC and all this stuff. No. You're here to help me look after your younger siblings.
I didn't even know anything about. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So they put into a situation and people like, who are you, kind of thing. Like if there's like 2 or 3 siblings that have been born in the UK, you've come in, they kind of almost have their own little clique going on, and then you kind of come in. So there's all these things that happened, and I think we didn't necessarily pay that much attention to the impact on the parents, on the children, on the family systems. And a lot of people are still hurt, even to this day. A lot of people are still hurt. But it's also the impact it leaves on the child, whether it's fears of rejection, fears of abandonment, also multiple losses as well, because a lot of people, let's say the grandparents or the aunties, became the mother figures. So when they left the Caribbean, they then lost that relationship as well. And then they've come into and then so they lost that relationship. They've come into a new kind of their family, but they don't have that connection there. And time wasn't necessarily spent kind of bridging and rebuilding that bond again. It would just kind of go on with it. And then you're going into school systems, dealing with all the BS of the school systems, maybe the area. So you had all these stuff that was more kind of, let's say, oriented towards the Caribbean community. And then within the African community specifically, you had a whole subculture of children being fostered by white foster carers. which and that also happened massively. So that was a different kind of separation that happened as well. That again impacts on people's sense of identity, feelings around again rejection, abandonment, and again when people were reunited with their parents after sometimes 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. Not much time was always spent again rebuilding that bond again. It was just more like, okay,
you're here now,
let's go, let's get on with it. And with the kind of the foster care system as well, is that some people were a few months old when the parents put them up into that private foster care, and then they were there for years. So that core part of upbringing, they didn't have a relationship with that parent, and then some parents still expect to be loved unconditionally, like I'm your parent, so you should love me, you should obey me
regardless,
and there's no relationship there. So that was, so the information sheet I wrote was trying to use those two kind of there's obviously different examples in between, but those two experiences to paint the picture that these things has a massive impact on causing childhood trauma, and it's something that we need to pay more attention to addressing, particularly those that have actually been through it. Is there still a legacy of that? Is there still an imprint on how it influences how you form relationships with your partner, with your own children, even work colleagues, because ultimately it impacts on people's sense of self in some way. And then that might interfere with them having healthy relationships.
Yeah, because I had this conversation with our producer Emma, and she was talking about being exact same thing, young people being placed into the foster care with white people, and sometimes the foster, because the family might not necessarily always be about, the foster family might even fight the parents when they come back to the child. And I was like, really? She was like, yeah, she was explaining all of that to me. And I think somewhere along the line, being placed in that environment will cause some sort of distrust, even if it is in terms of abandonment. Because if they're there Monday to Friday, and then the only time I may see you is on weekends, it would cause distrust for self. So then,
It's some people. I mean, I've spoken to my mom about this, and just to get context as well. And she said, yes, for some people, because of, let's say, housing situations and work and education commitments, it might just be Monday to Friday. For other people, they were put into foster care from a few months old for years, for 5 years, for 8 years, for years. So, and they'll see that parent kind of infrequently.
Right.
So you can't. So if that is happening at such a core period of a child's life, it's going to have it's going to have some level of impact in some way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because the question I'm trying to formulate in my head without sounding ridiculous, but then I'll try and say it as best as I possibly can. Do you think then that because of that kind of cycle, it's going to have a massive impact? But then do you think that will then cause a distrust for, I don't know, your parents? So then if your parents, you don't trust them, and that they are kind of like the prototype, that's who you're looking up to, do you think that's why relationships, because I don't want to say all Black relationships, I'm really trying to choose my words carefully, but do you think that's why some of the relationships, it could have an impact because of the distrust that comes down from that pattern? Because I personally think it has a massive impact of which we're not aware of. So, like, I'll give you an example. Like in our No Bravado group, we have different debates that we throw in, and we can find a million reasons to disagree with each other as the male and the female. One of the things that the males are saying is that the females don't take accountability for the demise of our relationships. Yeah. But there's a clear divide. If we put something in the group and it is like someone said, I saw this in another group and I just wanted to post it. And the meme said, we find enough reasons to fight with each other.
Yeah.
Can we call a truce? And can we just start over? Because black men, we love you. Let's start over. And that post didn't really get much reaction. But if we put reasons why you dislike us or name something you don't like about us, oh, the comments, they come. So I'm trying to, probably something I would never get to in my lifetime, but I will keep trying. It's trying to see how we can get to the root of that and where do we think these kind of barriers have come from in order to, like, as you opened up saying, to offer some sort of healing. But it has to be honest and it has to be something that we can say, okay, that makes sense, so that we can find our pathway back. Because I think I'm not saying black love doesn't exist. Of course it does. There's happy marriages, there's good relationships, there's people who are doing well, who are building, who are in good jobs, and who have are striving within the community. But then there is the other side of it, like I said, that just by watching and observing in this group, very small bubble, but we seem to be still very much angry with each other. And where has this distrust and this discord come from? So I think it is to do with intergenerational kind of behaviors and things that have occurred to lead to where we're at now that we're not even aware of. So how would we fix it if we're not even aware of it? Of where
I mean, I think we are aware of it to an extent because it gets spoken about quite a lot in different circles, even as we're talking about it. So there's a recognition that there is an issue there. And so the issue is, how do we break the patterns? How do we break the cycles? How do we create the conditions for us to have better, healthy relationships? And that is where somebody has to have that kind of mindset in themselves to say, I want to do something. It's like someone come to therapy with me. At some point, you have to say to yourself, I know I don't want to be on this path anymore. I want to do something about it. I know that I'm also part of the I won't say part of the problem, but I'm contributing to this in some way. So how can I work on myself to eliminate that, to minimize that? That's on a personal level. And then within, let's say, community, there is something we say, okay, how do we create the conditions within our community for better relationships? And part of it is holding each other more accountable. Part of it is to say to guys, you know what, it's not cool to have kind of, baby mothers or to not have or not to or to see it almost like settling down as somehow not good. It's almost like I want to be almost like a boy, almost like a boy forever. I want to be able to have fun. I don't want to be kind of held down or tied down by anybody. I want to be able to come and go as I please. And some people, men and women have to hold that person accountable and say, no, that's not acceptable. To an extent as well. So part of it is when we see behaviors and mindsets that are not healthy, we have to kind of also call it out, challenge it as well, and also as men and women not to accept. So part of it is almost like if we have healthy esteem, we'll make better choices as well. For some people, it's like, well, it's better to have this person than nobody.
Right.
And because loneliness is also very real. Because sometimes you feel like, well, it's almost like if I hold my boundaries, will I actually ever get anybody? Because if what I see around me is not very great options, so let me just make the best of a bad situation. And that's some people's world, that's what they think, or someone's like, those are the choices that they feel they have to make. So I'm not going to stand here and say like don't make it, but it just know that these are the consequences that you also bring into your life if you make certain choices, or you bring certain people into your life.
Yeah. Tony Cox says that Black love has been hugely affected by toxic feminist movements, the demasculation of the Black man, a specific path to destroy Black men from childhood, as described in the book The Conspiracy to Destroy Black Boys by Jawanza Kunjufu in 1985.
Right. Okay. That's interesting.
I'm not personally aware of that book, and I think the toxic.
What do you think that Black love has been destroyed by Black feminism?
Feminism, so toxic feminicity, feminist movements.
Okay, so toxic. There's a whole conversation around toxic masculinity, Black masculinity, toxic femininity. Feminism, from as a man, for me, it's about equality first and foremost.
Right.
How that is toxic, that's open for debate.
Right.
On the bigger landscape of it is that actually anything that's we attaching the idea of toxicity to it, that for me also represents the idea of people being in unhealthy ways of being. Because if it's toxic, then there's something that you are doing that is almost to a detriment to yourself as well. So there's something around healthy patterns perpetuating itself as well. There are people, and also people being stuck in survival mode. People are not in thriving mode. They're stuck in survival mode. So it's the behaviors that we're ascribing to toxicity of males and females are for me are people who are in survival mode, who are in a way damaged psychologically, emotionally in some way, but it's playing out in their lives right now. Because so it's not so we can that might be the symptoms of a deeper issue going on.
I think so, because I think like, again, based on just reading and looking at some of the things, I feel like I said earlier, men feel that
we don't take accountability.
Sorry, go on. What was I going to say?
Or was it that men don't think we take accountability?
They don't think we take accountability. And they also, this whole independent woman, and I don't need a man and I can do everything by myself, that really irritates as well. But then we've had deeper conversations across the board, where if a female has to look after herself, based on the topic that we're speaking about, being abandoned, or like I said, simply, my mum's dad went to America to get a better life, and so did my dad, which I found quite interesting. But whilst my dad was gone, what was she supposed to do other than get on with it? And so, there's a whole cycle of women getting on with it based on cycles of men that have gone off, not necessarily to just abandon because that's what they feel like doing, but because people die, or they genuinely want to go out and, look for a better life elsewhere, and they don't believe that they could do it in this country. So there's a generation of women in doing it for themselves, and a generation of cycles, I think, of, not for everybody, but of men that haven't been present. So then you've got women that are continuing that cycle of teaching us how to get on and do it, because you're going to need to stand alone, which then creates a mindset of, well, men are not going to be there for us because, like,
reliable.
I own it for myself. I didn't grow up in a household with a man. So then when you learn to do things from yourself, it's almost for yourself. It's then looked at as toxic femininity,
Yeah.
But it really doesn't stem from that. It's, you know, I want to be feminine, but let me be feminine then.
Yeah.
But it's just, you know, it's just a cycle of, if you are having to do for yourself, it just, to me, it just kind of continues where we are viewed as the problem for having to do for ourselves, and then women are viewing the men as the problem for not leading effectively. So where has all of this come from, I guess?
Yeah. It's, I mean,
and I think it is passed down. And I mentioned slavery. Kwame's mentioned, I went to call you Kwaku, apologise. Okay. Kwame's mentioned Windrush, but it's slavery came before Windrush. And cycles were more or less the same. You're leaving to go to a strange place. Families are broken up again. Resentments are happening when the families are reunited. So it just perpetuates down to where we're at now.
It's funny that you say that, because I had a good childhood, but I grew up with my mum. I saw my dad, but obviously lived with my mum, and it was like me and my mum. And my mum was very fiercely, my mum was a grafter. She worked hard. She did everything for me. She was everything to me. Yeah. So that's really all I knew. Then I had my daughter young. So in that first relationship, obviously it didn't work out, and I was very independent, but I was able to do that like that. It was like second nature. When my daughter's like 3, 4 now, I get into a relationship. I still don't know. So now how 15, 16 years later, how to let go and let someone look after you. I don't know how to do that. But put me into mode where you have to thingy, I'm a fixer, I'm a sorter, I'll fix it, I'll sort it, I'll do this, I'll do that. I know how to do that. That's nothing. But sit there and tell me, let me take the lead. I don't know. It's a language I can't understand because I haven't seen it. And even I think sometimes without even giving people a chance, I kind of think, nah, you got to make sure that you're all right.
Yeah. Every
single time. And so I think it definitely does come down from what you've seen. I see my mum, and my mum kind of, for me, she never slipped and she never fell. She probably did in the background and you didn't see, but because of that, you kind of hold that and you're like, nah, you can't rely on people. You got to be able to hold your own. So when people are telling you, let me take the lead or let me thingy, and you think, are you crazy? And then obviously if they then let you down in any way, there's like no room for you to give them any kind of...
But can I say as well, exactly what you're saying, 100% get, but then you're raising a daughter. So again, to me, it's like we want to break the cycle. So we want her daughter to have a healthy opinion of men and not feel like I have to do everything on my own. And it's just, how do we get to that, you know, kind of mindset and way of thinking, I guess. I've just had a question come in for you, Kwame.
Yeah.
So the question is our generation being taught to be independent and not be wives, and the same for men who have not seen men in their home? So in terms,
do you
want me to say again?
Yes, please.
Is our generation being taught to be independent and not wives, and the same for men who have not seen men in their homes? So basically, women are being taught to be independent, and men are taught to not commit. Do you think that has something to do with intergenerational behaviors? And as a therapist, how would you advise you move forward individually, because we can't tackle the whole.
We can't fix everyone.
How would you move forward with that?
I think it's been described as what is the whole thing of, it's like, what do you see, and what becomes normalized, what becomes kind of role modeled for you, and the role modeling is what you see. And also the other side of it is that if you don't see something, then you don't have it as a frame of reference. You can't envisage it. You can't envisage it. You can't draw on it to say, okay, well, when I get into a relationship, this is what I'm going to do too, because you haven't seen it for yourself. So that's the other side of the danger of it as well, is the fact that if you don't see healthy behaviors, you can't model it for yourself, or unless
Right.
you do some level of work to kind of build it up into your repertoire. So going back to what was being said as well is the fact that people, when the whole single lady stuff is almost like people have been forced to, so women have been forced to become independent, and then there might be a fear of becoming dependent. So it's almost like if I let go, I might becoming dependent, and that also causes almost someone to kind of convulse, because that is about putting yourself in somebody else's hands. So you have to have a lot of trust to say, this person will look after me, this person will be there for me, this person will take care of me. But the position that is best really is about being interdependent. It's not about either being independent or being dependent on somebody. It's how are you coming together to build something? How are you complementing each other? And I think that the language around toxic femininity and masculinity is the idea that it's almost like it's them and us. There is a very strong sense of it's them and us, rather than actually we're both hurt. We've both been impacted by what we've been through, but it's expressing itself in these ways of how we're trying to survive or protect ourselves. So for me, that's a context to it. And once you recognize that, it's about doing the work to address the issues that are specific to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think that's the right word you use when you said there's like a fear of becoming dependent. And it's a fear that, like, you never want to be dependent. It's a vulnerability that you're not willing to kind of fall into or to have. So that there is like a fear that is, I think that's a good word for
Because
it, because it's exactly that.
Because as a child, if it's been normalized that actually I can rely on people around me to be there for me, to basically, you kind of take it for granted that things will work out, that things are okay. You then have that inherent trust going forward, that actually, if I get into a relationship, even though I know that it can go wrong, invariably I feel as though it will be okay. So therefore, the self-protective kind of things, that behaviors and attitudes that you may use, is not actually required anymore. You don't go in with a defensive mindset to think that, okay, because I think sometimes I put this to people to say, quite often people kind of say, I don't trust you. I only trust you when you prove that I can trust you. When then it becomes, well, so what is your threshold? When do you then say to somebody in your mind that actually I trust you now? Whilst from somebody coming from a more secure kind of sense of self, is that actually until you prove otherwise, I'm taking at face value that I can trust you.
Yeah.
And that comes from a very different place, and a very different energy, and very different behaviors and attitudes that come with that.
Yeah.
So if there's a fear of dependency, it's kind of like, it's fear based off, I have to protect myself, and I have to wait until the person proves that they're going to be there for me. And sometimes, there's
before you've even started.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But where do you think that this trust comes from?
It's life experiences.
Inherent.
It's either in the home. For a lot of people, it's in the home. It's also a relationship they see around them. If you haven't seen positive relationships either in your home, or let's say in your family systems, if then rightly so, within that context, you see that relationships aren't safe. Relationships aren't a safe place to be in.
Yeah, because I think that's what's happened with me. But I was really, really close with my dad. He was my world. So when he left, I was about 4, and I remember things that happened prior to him leaving, but I don't remember when he left, how I felt, but my mum said I was really sad and the school contacted her, but to this day I can't remember that period.
Yeah.
And obviously I grew up in a house, as mentioned, with just a single parent, with my mum, who was everything, same as you now. But I remembered feeling really hollow with the absence of my dad. And I think that played out in some negative scenarios in terms of partners that I chose, in terms of trying to pursue that void, fill that void. And not even just partners, friendships and stuff like that. And then I remember going to see him when I was 11, and I was telling the girls this story. This is the first time I was kind of really introduced to real integrity. And then I met him, and he took me to see one of his friends. And the friend was really happy to see him and shook his hand and gave him a hug and went off to get him a beer. And the friend's wife was standing there. And I remember the two of my dad and the friend's wife kissing. And me at 11 being horrified and knowing that that was wrong. And then being really uncomfortable throughout the whole of the visit after that, because when the friend came back with the beer that he went to get for my dad, I just, like I said, they spoke, they laughed, they talked. My dad drank the beer, and then off we skipped to wherever else we went. But that, I'm 46 now, and that stuck with me since that happened. And then, so that's a memory of men not to be trusted. But ironically, some of the partners that I ended up dating had the characteristics of my dad. And my dad wasn't about. I saw him when I was 11. I saw him again when I was, I think, 18, 19-ish. And then again when I was 25. We spoke on the phone weekly. We kept in touch after a period of time. We kept in touch, and we spoke weekly until he died. But I'd only ever been around him those 3 times, really, for like maybe 6 weeks at a time or 2 months at a time, but not that much. However, a lot of the characters that I ended up dating had similar traits. So it's, for me, I always kind of felt like, I know that the hollowness that it caused me. So I always felt like if I'm going to have kids, I want it to be in wedlock. I want it to be, I want the male figure to be there, because I think it's very important to have that balance, because I can thrive independently, but I've not been taught how to be in a relationship. And then when I do attract relationships, it's characteristics like my dad, which wasn't that the healthiest. So really trying to put your best foot forward and understand where the cycles are coming from and how to kind of put a stop to it. So I say all of that to say that I think that cycles are important. I decided to not have kids because I didn't really meet anybody that I trusted to have kids, because I kept attracting people that had the same characteristics as my father without even really being around him. So it's just trying to have an understanding of how that occurs. And that's why we wanted to pick your brain, because we know you, you know this stuff.
I mean, I have to say, first and foremost, that what your dad exposed you to was really distressing, potentially, obviously, if not traumatic.
Helps you to form an opinion of how men behave,
but
that makes sense.
But also your father, who, from what you said, it was like you idolized as well. But also he put you in a very awkward. He made you into a co-conspirator. And that was a lot, and that was very hard. That was a lot for you to have to hold at such a young age, because what did you do with that information? What did you do with that vision?
Stored
Where did it go? And
Yeah.
therefore, how did that affect you in some way? And yes, you spoke, and also yes, you spoke regularly. But like I said, relationships is about how regularly you nurture the relationship. So how often do you to seeing him and being around him and seeing and spending time with him is definitely really, really important. And we're not here to say that relationships don't fall apart or it doesn't work. That's the reality of it, that unfortunately not all relationships are going to last. But I think there's something that Esther Perel, who's like a massive therapist, says the end of the relationship shouldn't be the end of the family. So
absolutely. Yeah.
So again, for healthy parenting, it's about, okay, if it's not going to work, how do we become the best co-parents and be child-centered in what we do?
Yeah.
To ensure that the child has as much stability as possible through the kind of like the core years that they go forward. And therefore also seeing parents co-parent in well, it's also a great life lesson. It also demonstrates around how relationships still can work, communication, just kind of what's called, it demonstrates as well the fact that just because it doesn't work doesn't mean that you have to be enemies in some shape or form.
Yeah.
You can see parents negotiating. You can see that you're still important. You're still important to the parents. You haven't been rejected or abandoned. What has happened is about the parents and not you. So it's really also about if relationships aren't working, it's also for parents to become the best co-parents possible. Because that's because quite often it feels like it's quite extreme, that if it's not working, then some parents just disappear, or go off and do what they're doing, and almost like the child becomes secondary to that. And all these things send a message as to the value, as to self-worth of the child, particularly depending on them, how old they are. So there's all these there's all these factors. And in terms of what you're saying about attracting certain kinds of men, again, I don't want to be too deterministic, but it's also it's how it influences your decision making, because part of it might be who you attract, but it's also who you allow to stay in your life.
Yeah.
Because we can all make mistakes and say, okay, I thought this person was this kind of person, but actually they're showing the true colors to be like this. But quite often when there is kind of, red flags or amber flags, people still push through. And that's when it's really about your sense of self, because part of it is how are you making how are you making decisions based on what is happening in front of you. If the person is showing you almost who they are and you're still kind of saying, well, maybe they'll change, and then those are where you almost like you're kind of compromising compromising what you know is healthy for you, and it becomes, why is that?
I mean,
go for it.
Michelle was saying that her marriage didn't last, but she's committed to making sure that she co-parents with her children's dad and doesn't want the children to feel like they have to choose. I feel the same as Mish. But Olu says that co-parenting is now viewed as an acceptable outcome rather than trying to resolve issue between parents. But I think that when you've exhausted all your options, the only thing that you're left to do is co-parent. What are you going to do? You cannot beat a dead horse. And I think that if you sometimes insist on kind of beating this dead horse and living together and pushing through that relationship, you could actually cause more trauma than you would if you just co-parented in a kind of amicable way. It's not everything you can force. Some things it can cause a very toxic home, and your kids can grow up talking about the fights that they used to hear, or the this or the that, or the atmosphere in their household. And I do think that once you have exhausted all your options, if you cannot be together, then amicable co-parenting is the only way forward. The problem is that a lot of relationships are not lasting, and that's why we're seeing a lot of it. And he's saying, and it might look like it's being viewed. That's the point. There's a lot of breakdowns in the relationship, and they do become toxic. And so, yes, you're going to see, I feel like we're going to see a lot of co-parenting, because there's a huge breakdown within relationships in general. And just because the relationships used to last back in the day, they weren't necessarily great.
Exactly.
And there's people traumatized from those relationships that their parents insisted on keeping. Yeah.
Exactly.
And so
just to add to that as well, is because I remember going to like a Saturday school event, and the whole conversations around relationships within Black families, and why is it like so seemingly so worse now, because our grandparents, they used to stay together forever, but everybody knows that how many old school relationships where basically the man, more often than not, but obviously sometimes the women as well, but they wouldn't have, they kind of went out and about, and the woman was kind of like at home for ages, or the cases of, as been described, outside children in relationships, or all these kind of extramarital affairs. And I think it's been best described that back in the day, women basically, a lot of times the women were the ones that had to make it work by staying. So quite often the relationship lasted 50 years, but if you talk to a lot of them, there was a lot of drama up for a good portion of it, until it settled down in some way. So it wasn't so. But now I guess people have a less tolerance as well for BS, but also that's the other side of it. But one side of it as well is where are we in ourselves before we get into a relationship?
Absolutely.
That part, absolutely. Yeah.
And before we rush into certain commitments, how well do we kind of know each other?
Yeah.
You know what you want, how you want it. Because I think that can be an issue as well. Not really knowing what you want and then realizing you don't want it in the relationship is a big issue as well. But like Olu said, that people work harder for their employers than in their relationships. But I just don't think it's as blanket as that. I feel like it's not just about leaving a relationship because there's violence or because there is cheating. I think some relationships they just don't treat you right in general. Some relationships are not good for your mental health. It could be toxic cycles, it could be mental abuse, it could be a relationship where you're not meant to be together. And it's not to say that you don't work at it. I think if you've worked at it and you've done everything, and you can't, when there is children and you physically cannot gel, then that's when I think. But I don't think it's as easy as, people don't really try now. Of course, there is a generation where they're more likely to skip off into the sunset and say, forget this, I don't need it. Without that, there's definitely more of that now, but there is a lot more of people being able to identify what is toxic, what is not right, what they can tolerate and what they cannot. And if you're living in an environment where it's not a good environment, it's not a good environment. I don't think that you should stay in that environment. I've seen older family members who have been together for years, and I just remember them from a child to this day, like my nan's generation, fighting like cat and dog to this age. They're miserable, they're vile, some of the things they say to each other. It's like, why are you together? You don't like each other, there's always an issue, and it's drama, and obviously as you've got older you can identify it more. And you're together because you're together, but you don't like each other, you don't sleep in the same room, you don't think, you've got different rooms, different beds, you go out and do your thing, you're not together. So it's like, it's not always just about being together to say that, we made it through. I think genuinely being happy together and working through those obstacles and then getting through them happily together is an achievement. not beating a dead horse and making yourself miserable and everyone around you.
Yeah. But yeah, I agree with all those things, and I'm definitely an advocate for people doing that work, for people doing work on themselves. I definitely even now I'll say to people, like, literally do almost do a self audit, do an audit on your experiences, your childhood experiences. How's that shaped you? How's that shaped attitude to relationships, your expectations of yourself, of your potential partner? Is that healthy? Is that reasonable? Think about, if and when you are in a relationship and you're thinking about having kids, think about actually what kind of parent am I likely to be based on my my own parenting experiences, and what do I need to almost be aware of and to think about and to do work on. If you do say you want to get married, do work on that as well. Again, going forward, what is going to be your expectations of your partner as when you get married or have a civil union. There's all these things that also sometimes as well is that we can talk about these things, but until we're actually in a live environment of a relationship, certain things don't come up. So some people are great friends, but when they're in a relationship, their mind goes somewhere else because there's stuff in the background that comes alive when they're actually in a relationship, whereas fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, a lot of fears of vulnerability, a lot of things that outside of a relationship isn't there will come up in the heat of a relationship, because relationships can evoke and trigger so much for people if they've been through certain experiences. So that's why I always I'm definitely advocate for people doing the work. And sorry, to go back to something that we've said as well, is that there is the trauma that might somebody might go through, but then it's also about how it's dealt with. So that is equally so. When I think when you describe your parents breaking up, that's one thing. That's it's happened. So that might be distressing, but it's how it's dealt with after that going forward that can really shape a child or shape somebody. So in your parent, let's say your dad kind of not then being around as frequently, that might have been even a bigger impact than the original relationship ending. So it becomes, and for me as a man, my feeling and thinking is that, well, what did he do to nurture a relationship that made you feel secure? And obviously you spoke regularly, but if you only saw him 3 times, that for me is okay. So what was that like for you? Even though I'm not asking you to answer that question, but I'm just saying that's what for me is like. What is the impact of that? What is the impact of that?
I actually don't mind answering it a little bit.
Yeah.
But finish what you was going to say.
No, so for me it's that is for us to all be equally mindful of the fact is we're not just saying that one thing happens and then that's it. There is the work that goes into either repairing, mitigating, trying to heal, or it can actually exacerbate the original wound, the original trauma.
Yeah.
See, I'm dedicated to healing and understanding my cycles so that I can put a stop to them. So to answer a little bit of your question, I know that I knew that my mum was everything, and she still is. We're very, very close, me and my mum, and but my mum was also very dedicated to her children. So because she had had a bad experience with step parents, she was adamant that no one was going to come into our lives and ill treat us. So she protected us and was mother and father. That's what we saw. As you said, I only having the absence and only seeing my father 3 times in my life, it did make me feel hollow. As I got older, it did make me feel like I know that I'm quite a confident person, and I know that I can do most things that I put my mind to. But having children without having a stable partner was something that I just never felt that I wanted to do or could do on my own.
Yeah.
Because I understood that dads are important and how mine being absent made me feel. I also feel, I believe, I'm not saying this is a fact, but this is my belief. From what I understand, my dad was perfect partner up until my mum was pregnant to a stage where she wasn't able to get rid of me, and then the change came. So I think again that not that I was told that as an adult until I was an adult, because my mum was very, very strict about not bad mouthing my dad. She wanted me to form my own opinion, which I did. I also think that I was there. So although I wasn't physically there, I was there and I experienced what she was going through because I was in her womb. So I would have caught some of that. So to a degree, I believe, my belief is that, you know, you experience things. It might not that it was might not be something that you can articulate, but the experience of it was something that was very real for me. So coming along and then not having my dad about, I know for me, I wanted a partner that my eldest brother might not have been the best partner to his wife, but his children know that the only thing that would have been able to separate him from them is death. Because my brother's died, because he was dedicated to his kids. So to a degree, I was looking for somebody that I knew, even if you and I don't make it,
Yeah,
I'm not gonna go out and have 10 kids by 10 different women and not be able to father each of the households properly.
yeah,
Does that make sense? I never wanted to be a part of that. So to a degree, the cycle kind of stopped with me because I never had any children, and I knew that I didn't want to continue that from a very young age, if that makes sense.
yeah.
But the consequence is I haven't got children, so I'm okay with that. So I guess that's how it impacted me, to answer the question. And why I've spent a lot of time on my own.
Yeah.
But again, is that because I've watched my mum spend a lot of time on her own protecting, so it's second nature to me.
Yeah, so it's okay. It's okay, but again, it's about what's been in a way normalized.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah.
But then for me, I'm still very much a different person from my mum, and I still very much believe in Black love. I
Yeah.
still very much want Black love in my life, and I want it to be healthy. And
Yeah.
I've done a lot of work on myself, but I still feel like there's these kind of conversations, they help, because it's like, okay, understanding what cycles you bring into a relationship, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
is paramount to it being successful.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess this is why we wanted to have this
No, yeah.
talk. Yeah.
It's definitely, I said, it's, and I think as well, because of what we've generally gone through in this country, in terms of Black, specifically African Caribbean communities, there's a lot of stress as well on relationships.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stress on relationships in general in life already. Finances, you know, housing, all these kinds of things. So we know that relationships, like let's say finances are a massive thing in terms of a relationship stressor. And we are part of a general community where our income levels generally tend to be lower than the average, either average kind of white family, or even I think the average Asian family, or certain types of certain groups of Asian families. The average Black family's income is so much lower. So even on that level, we have that massive stressor. Plus, we have all the other stressors that go into our lives already. So if we're coming from a challenged emotional base already, and then we've got all these stresses as well, it's almost like double, triple whammies all the time. So
Yeah.
because relationships even relationship, all healthy relationships even come with like excess amounts of conflict and so forth. So if you haven't even got healthy conflict resolution skills within your relationship, and then you've got all this stuff being thrown at you, that's also gonna kind of throw all these things into the mix as well. So there's
so much, there's a lot to unpack.
There's the aspect of it as well.
So much, yeah.
Right. Anything to add now? I'm going to share my screen again and try and get back to this presentation.
No, I just it just makes so much sense. We know it really, but it's just like confirmation. Because it does make a lot of sense.
Yeah. So this was something that Amma, our producer, sent to us.
Okay.
Which basically speaks about the same thing that I was just speaking about. Before your mother was born, your grandmother and the earliest trace of you were all in the same body. What your grandmother felt and experienced affected your DNA. So we've already asked this question: Can our DNA be affected by generations before us? I believe they can be.
Yeah.
I think the general consensus is yes. Another question posted by a producer is, do you have any, let me just move this down so I can see it. Sorry. Do you have a negative trait that you copied, inherited from your parents? So this was a question posted by our producer. And some of our responses that we got from our members were kind of as follows. Our producer said the silent treatment when she's pissed off with someone, and she got that from her mum, who, again, if she's angry, just don't say anything. Sometimes it might be safer. But then what I found interesting was that there was a number of people that responded basically saying, yes, I have the same behaviors. And again, from our mums. Yeah. Nikki said she cusses bad words. Someone said sarcastic. Someone said sarcastic and impatient. I said my ability to spend many years alone, I believe is learned behavior from my mum. Someone said, well, is that a negative thing? So I basically said yes and no. The reason being, there was no natural example of how to be in a relationship, and got used to the absence of men for a while. The absence of my father, with examples of horrible relationships around me, made me form a belief that there was lack of good men. I believed men abandoned as a result, without realizing, develop commitment issues. So as I've grown into myself, I've managed to transform that energy and my belief system. Now my ability to stand alone and exercise patience in this area is brilliant, and no longer a negative pattern. But I had to work hard to change my mindset. I'm still working, to be fair. A guy called Jeffrey said he's a mild hoarder. And I found that interesting because so am I. Slight got problems throwing away things that you should just throw away.
Yeah.
And I'm doing kind of renovations with my mum at the moment, and the whole idea is to throw away things and try and lighten the load. And we're literally having, well, it's mine, but the picture frame's broken, but it's mine. But it's 20 years old and it's broken, but it's mine. And I have the same behaviors. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Things like that. Trisha Blake said, drinking. My dad was the type where one was too many and 1,000 was not enough. So I try to avoid drink, as if I drink that one drink and I can't continue. I think she meant to say that she will continue. I think we've lost Natalie.
Hopefully she
okay. And Daniel said, my independence and sometimes lack of tactility, not touchy-feely as needed, grew up with no hugs or kisses, which I found really interesting as well. What do you think about what do you think about the comments that you've seen so far?
Yeah, I'm not too surprised
About these, your therapist, so these are all of the things that you'll hear. Yeah,
I'm not too surprised about it, but also it becomes one of the questions is like, are those things a negative? And it's everything's kind of context and within reason. I mean, the main thing is actually is it healthy? Another question that I was asked, I would kind of invite people to ask themselves is actually, are you happy? Do you want more for your life or more for your relationships than you currently are? It's like, if you're happy with how, if I'm saying, well, these things are quote unquote unhealthy, but you're like, well, but I'm fine with that, then I guess on a personal level, if you genuinely feel as though your life is okay and there's no issue, then it's not for me to say you must go and fix it. But quite often the whole thing is that, are you genuinely happy? Are you living a satisfied, fulfilling, healthy life, happy life?
right.
Either by yourself or in a relationship. And if you are hand on heart, the answer is yes, then cool, do you. But if you know that the things that you do are almost interfering with your own ability to thrive in life and in a relationship, then the question then is what potentially can you do to change that?
Right.
Yeah. And I think it's important. I think it's important to be happy. You should be able to stand alone and be happy, and have a good, healthy understanding of who you are, what your triggers are, and what it is that you need to heal, so you don't drag that baggage into your next relationship. And that's currently what we're doing now, and what we're hoping our audience, whoever needs to, picks up something from this and goes forward with healing, because I think it's important as a community, and I think it's important to understand where our behaviors stem from. I look at things from a spiritual aspect. You look at things from a therapist.
Yeah.
Which I think is here and now. It's very useful.
Yeah.
So we always love when you come on and share your expertise with us, because you don't have to.
No, and it's everything is, I guess, is mind, body, and spirit. It's not just mind or body or spirit. It's a combination of all of it. And
absolutely,
for me as a therapist, is that I definitely respect, let's say, the spirit. I definitely appreciate that has is part of a whole. And the other thing that I say quite often is that it's actually what belongs where. Because if you've got let's say a broken leg and you want to do mindfulness to make it better, that's not going to fix it. You need to do something to heal that leg. Being mindful or meditating is not going to it's not going to put a cast on that leg and straighten it and do the rehab.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
the rehab to for similarly, if you're spirituality also should support what you're doing. If you need to if you need to heal emotionally, you still need, and your spiritual side can give you the fortitude and give you the not so the willpower, but the inner strength to say, I need to do this work. I need to do the work. So your spirituality should support the work that you might need to do physically and mentally. If that's where the healing is required. So that's what I'll say to that.
Makes 100% sense. 100%.
Yeah.
We're going to wrap up we're not doing a long show today. We've kept Olu waiting, and yeah, we're not going to do the longest, so I'm going to whiz through this as quickly as possible. This was something that was sent through to us. Losing a parent to suicide makes children more likely to die by suicides themselves and increases their risk of developing a range of major psychiatric disorders, according to a study led by Johns Hopkins Children's Center that is believed to be the largest one on the subject. So again, do we think to me, that just solidifies that patterns continue.
Yeah. I mean, John Hopkins obviously is a well-known institution. So if they've done a research, I'm not going to disagree with it. It for me also reminds me of the whole thing of childhood trauma. Is parents losing a parent by suicide. Bereavement is one of the things around that if children go through can be classed as childhood trauma. So bereavement in any shape or form, including suicide, is a massive thing for children. Childhood separation, it's also a massive issue. But also it kind of reminds me of the whole thing of addiction within family systems as well. It's kind of what is the imprint of that experience on that child if they lose a child, if they lose a parent by a suicide, what message does that send? Was the imprint of that experience, and how do they potentially take it forward into their own lives? So
yeah,
right.
Yeah. I just think there's so much to all of this, but yeah, we could be here debating forever.
Yeah. I mean, just to plug that information sheet again, is essentially with Windrush Day coming up soon as well, is that particularly anyone that's been impacted by family separation of some sort, is to really reflect, to think about how, if it had an impact on them, how if they're even the big person now, is to still think and reflect as to how did it affect me? That is it still almost working within me now? Do I need to do something about it, even as a grown person? How might it still be influencing my relationship with myself, but also with others around me?
Right. I stopped the share just as just as you stopped talking. Oh, hang on. Okay. So this is something I find that happens a lot. I can only speak for my family, but like, why do we hide important things in the family? Because it's the meaning that goes along with that question is we will never break generational curses until we stop hiding family secrets. Natalie, what do you think? What do you guys, both of you, chime in here? What do you think this is about? Because for me, I do think that there's definitely a culture of that doesn't concern you, whereas the elders were more open, we would be able to fit pieces to the puzzle a little bit quicker. What do you think about that?
I do think that openness and the creating an environment where you can discuss, hash out, and ultimately work on healing or work on working things out with things, that is a hindrance, because there is a lot of that. I can even be like that sometimes. That's not no one's business, or that's not your business, or you're a child, like it's not for you. It's that kind of thing, or just discussing.
But that's because you're actually speaking to children.
Yeah, but
or what about our age? Yeah.
But as well, there's a thing also about, I think it's again that vulnerability where you feel like if people know your certain aspects of your business, it can leave you very vulnerable. So there's kind of that as well, and there's this kind of element as people don't need to know your business, and there's no boundaries to that. So anything, going to a therapist, why are you telling people your business? Doing this, I don't want to go to the doctors for this, I don't want to tell him my business. It's on so many different levels of there's just so many levels to it of not wanting to talk. And I think if you did, obviously there's got to be a boundary there, and there's thingy to that, but I think that if there was more openness and that kind of, not platform, but that environment where you could kind of discuss, pick things apart, hash it out, and work on solutions, obviously that would definitely be better. I say that, but it just feels horrendous to me at the same time, like my worst nightmare on earth. So I get it.
So, well, what's your thoughts around that, Kwame?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things around the secrets, and it's kind of like, what are the secrets? So sometimes you're like, really, is that it? Like, what's the big deal? But
Yeah.
there is a thing around shame. What do people feel ashamed about? Like, why, and what is it that makes them feel ashamed about it? If it's about, affairs, or versus mental health, versus finances, versus all these things, it's like, if someone's in debt but they don't want to tell anybody, or let's say the house is going to be taken away from them because they haven't been paying their bills, and then like, but actually those are things that you could use your support system around you. You can lean into them to maybe to be helped by somebody. So
Right.
so the secrets is really about what are the secrets about, and what is the significance of keeping a secret? What is it about, letting people know, or also reaching out for help that
Yeah.
that is being denied in a way.
Because as Natalie said, I know for the old, like I said on another live, and as Natalie just said as well, I had 3 older brothers. They all passed away. I definitely needed counselling. My mum did not see the need for it, but she was the person who lost the 3 kids. Because again, it was an aspect of, well, I'm not going to go and sit down and just bare my soul to some strange person that I don't know. So then that kind of comes down. Where did she get that from?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So again, I'm totally different. I needed the counselling, so I sought it. But I've definitely heard a lot of elders just basically say they don't need counselling. They're not going to talk about things, and they don't. They don't talk about things. They don't talk about things to us, let alone strangers. So it makes it a little bit more difficult to try and piece the puzzles, or to put pieces to the puzzle and to build a full picture.
Yeah.
Because it's not readily available, I guess I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it is hard, because
Do you think it's needed?
it's I don't want to say yes, because it's like everyone's different.
Right.
Losing 3 children, I mean, I can't comprehend if it's not kind of natural causes, over like they're all big people. Obviously, if you're a parent and you're losing your kids, that's different, because that's very distressing. I won't say trauma, but that's potentially that's very upsetting. For me, is like, what do you do with that? Like, part of me is like, how are you feeling about either God or the universe? It's like, what's this about? Why is this happening to me? Even with those questions that naturally come up, like, who do you go to with those questions? Do you have a space to be angry at life and the world for this happening to you?
Yeah.
What questions you might have? Do you have whether you have either a friend, a sister, somebody? Do you have a space to talk things out loud, to try and make sense of what is happening, to let out your feelings? If you have you don't, it doesn't have to be a therapist, but but for me, it's always like, does a person have that space, someone that they can not offload to, but also to just to vent to just talk out loud to? So for me, those are the things that are equally important, beyond just having therapy for some people. But it's, what relationships do you have around you to have that, to be able to talk things out, and just to
do that? But you think it's important?
Oh, definitely.
Right.
I think it's important, it's healthy, and it's also about being in relation to when it's needed, because sometimes people might feel as though it's happened today, so you must talk tomorrow. It's not always about that. It's really about
Sorry, guys. 1 second.
When someone's going through a particular journey, it's what do they need at particular different points in time.
Yeah.
And then how do they access support? How do they use people and things around them to support them where at the point of need?
Right. Yeah. Definitely makes sense. Yeah, we'll be here forever. I'm gonna probably because I've got a million questions. You know me.
Okay,
So
one more. Then just give me one more. What's burning for you?
I'll go back to a point. Hang on.
Or is there any questions that people have asked before I go?
Yeah. Someone's asked if you can share the information of your Windrush
Related information sheet.
Yeah, the information sheet. Can you share it to the group? But you'd only be able to do that if you're a member of the group. So maybe you send it to Amma and we can share it for you.
Okay, that's fine. I think I've sent it to her previously, but I'm happy to send it to her again.
Okay, no problem.
Okay.
I think I if it's the same sheet, then I think
it's the same one. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we have that. So this was basically the last thing that I wanted to discuss. Do you have any advice on how to positively break cycles? And in this meme, it's just basically saying for those choosing to break generational cycles, your parents couldn't do it, their parents couldn't do it, but for some reason you noticed the pattern and decided it ends with you. You're the prototype, so much power that you have, it must be a lot. So the reason that struck me is because I think I've definitely noticed cycles in our family.
Yeah.
I've definitely wanted to put a stop to it for myself, and anybody else who's interested in putting a stop to it. You do get some resistance, you do get some pushback, especially from people who are stuck in their ways.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice on how to positively go through those challenges?
I mean, once you have that idea that, okay, this is where I am, this is what I need to break. It is literally reaching out to either professionals or non-professionals to help you in that journey, because having the insight is one thing,
right?
But it also requires you to learn almost new life skills, new ways of doing things, because quite often is that we are emotionally driven people. So even if you have insight, you need to embody the changes that you want to make in your life, and that requires time. And that's why long-term therapy, it kind of has its own benefits when you're working with relational issues, because you need time to embed and almost to unlearn, to learn new things. And it doesn't happen overnight, because if you are, in your 30s or in your 40s, in your 50s, and you've been doing certain things for a very long time, you need time to undo the emotional muscle memory before you can start doing something different. Otherwise you keep on reacting rather than responding. So it is about doing that work, and obviously as a therapist, part of it is therapy, because you need to have that space to process, to think out loud, to learn, to practice,
right?
And then you can almost like have that platform for change in your personal life. So obviously there's stuff around reading books these days, podcasts, but a lot of it is about, in addition to the insight, is learning to practice and to embody the new ways of being that are going to be healthy for you, and that takes time. So therefore people are going to need patience with themselves, and also be compassionate with themselves whilst they're still learning.
That's very important, because I think I've gotten a lot better with this, but it used to be very, very hard on myself. And it is about saying, look, it's okay to make a mistake. It's like you said earlier, it's about identifying and progressing and moving on. If you stay stuck making the same mistake, well, then that's an issue. But if you recognize it and then put strategies in place to grow and build, then it's about being okay with that. Whereas I wasn't okay with making any mistakes whatsoever, and life is about making mistakes, learning, growing, and building.
And if you've gone through intergenerational trauma, and you're trying to break that, you invariably have been in survival mode, and therefore a lot of the things that you're doing is about ensuring your safety. It's about protecting yourself. And so that's understandable. But once you try to move away from that, and you need to learn other life skills, then that also takes time to master and for that to become second nature.
Yeah.
So that can be very, very frustrating, because when you're an adult, you want to do things overnight. You want things to happen overnight.
Absolutely.
So that's where it does require patience to help you to learn and to basically, for whatever you're trying to do, to become better decision making, better communication skills. All these things does take time, because it takes time to master, particularly if you've been doing it for for many years of your life.
Yeah, and it's quite difficult. This aspect of it is because, like you said, it's like having to learn a whole new set of life skills. So I felt like I had changed as a person, changed as a woman, on a complete different level, and felt like a fish out of water for a minute.
Yeah.
So it was trying to develop coping strategies around what I had unearthed on myself and who I'm growing to be. That process lasted about a year. I would say I'm on the other side of it now, but still searching for those life tools to help aid. And yeah, like we say, it's about having the show so that people, if they do need those life aids, can gain some kind of understanding or some signposting to where they can get that. So
just to add two things as well, in terms of the question around what people can do. It's doing all the things that I've just described and you just described. It's also, people also, I would say, be mindful of that. In that healing journey, in that cycle comes maybe a lot some other side of the emotions as well, like some sadness, some anger, because quite often you're also tapping into almost like the life that could have been, the life that you wish you had lived. Because sometimes when you recognize that you've been stuck in a particular unhealthy cycle, you might feel that I've wasted 10 years of my life living a particular way. So it also brings quite a lot of let's say, mourning and loss that comes with that healing process as well. And also another aspect of it as well is that people need to also potentially be ready for the fallout in the family systems and the friendship systems, because when you change and people do the same, it creates ripple effects where people are used to you being a particular way. So quite often when you're doing the work almost solo, there tends to be a little bit of ripple effect, because other people almost then forced to change, and sometimes people don't want to change. They're happy with you being who they are. They're happy with things. They're happy with how things have been and how things have always been, whilst you are changing, and therefore you will naturally want different things for yourself. You may want the relationship to serve you differently. You may not actually want that person in your life anymore, because you realize that the person not healthy for you. All these things also come with some sort of almost pain in itself, but it's a different kind of pain.
Yeah.
Anything to add there before we wrap up?
No, I think we've covered it.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to I'm going to just share my screen so that I can put your website up. Hang on, me and this thing. Right. So this is I always steal this shot from your website.
That's cool.
All right. So do you want to tell the audience where to find you, what services you offer, best way to contact you?
Yes, so I'm a counselor psychotherapy and private practice. So you can just contact me via my website, and it has my email address. If you go to contact details, it has my email address and my mobile number. I'm also on the Barton directory, which is the Black Asian Therapy Network, and I'm part of that directory as well, so I can be contacted through that. I'm also on Insta, Kwame Opoku Counseling on Insta as well. I post about different things, kind of giving a therapeutic lens to things as well. And yeah, so if anyone's got questions about therapy, generally that they want to kind of put to me, feel free to email me. I'll try my best to answer and direct you. On a personal level, I'm not at the moment not taking any that like private clients at the moment, because it's been so busy for so many Black therapists at the moment. But if someone's looking for a therapist, please do go to Barton as a first point of call for if you want kind of a black or person of color. Please go to Barton as a starter for 10, but there's other directories out there as well.
So just to finish off, because sorry, you know, I pick up things. You said there's been a demand for black counsellors.
Yes.
Since lockdown. I remember the last time we spoke, you said it was because of George Floyd, and since lockdown. Is that still the case?
Yeah, it's still the case. I think particularly let's say since last May and George Floyd, but in general there has been an increase in demand for black therapists, and I think there's also more conversations around kind of like culturally competent therapists and having therapists that look like you and the people feel more. People say it's been more relatable. So that's an ongoing conversation. But I think people have almost been forced to maybe look at themselves in a way that they haven't been due to lockdown, and people haven't, let's say, spending more time with themselves or having to spend more time with themselves. So it's in a positive way, it's created a demand. So, and also with the work being largely via Zoom is made it more democratic as well, because previously people were having to be tied to the area of London that they were living and working in, and so forth, to get a therapist, or particularly people that were outside London who weren't particularly well served with black therapists. They now have access to people like me and other therapists, because everyone's working majority online now. So black people, so the demand hasn't just been about, let's say, black Londoners. It's been about, let's say, black people around the country seeking therapy, and now they can access it better because of let's say of Zoom.
The options of being online.
Online.
That's really good. That's good.
Yeah.
Well, it's always a pleasure. I do find your insight really, it does make sense. It's valuable. It does make sense. I remembered one of the last times I spoke to you when we done the mental health show, and I said to you, sometimes I get random just anxiety, and you explained to me that it could be data.
Yeah, it's data.
And ever since that's really helped. So that's why it's always a pleasure. I'm sure if you've helped me, there's someone listening that it's helped. And again,
thank you for inviting me. Thank you for deeming me worthy of being part of the Bravado. So thank you.
Yeah, but you're our family now.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you very much.
We'll let you go, because we've been on for nearly 2 hours anyway. It doesn't feel like it, but we actually have
conversation.
And we'll definitely talk again soon.
All right.
You stay there and we'll wrap up. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thanks for joining us, my love. Bye.
All right. Bye.
Yo. You recovered from street brunching?
Little bit. Listen, I can't drink more than one drink without feeling a bit worse for wear for a few days. Anymore. Yeah, it just doesn't work anymore. But it was good. I had fun. Yeah, that was nice. Yeah, it was a good vibe. I had fun. Yeah. I had fun. It was our first little get out properly. Since forever, it feels like. Yeah. Jeez, man. Yeah, for real. Yeah. But yeah, what you got coming up? Let's wrap up, because it's been a long day. And I've got a really early start. So yeah. Long days, early starts. Well, what we got coming up? I'm off this week. I'm gonna scream it from the rooftops. So I'm literally stopping by no Bravado group at all this week. No, I'm stopping by. I can't help myself. No, it doesn't feel like work. That doesn't feel like work. Yeah, I know what you mean. No Bravado gets the exception. Well, that's it. So I've just been living like a housewife. No husband, but just like the housewife, going for brunches and silly little things like that. So I'm enjoying that. In the summer, what next? As you guys know, what next is our community initiative, where we work on independence within different fields within the Black community. One of the main fields that we're working on with a business mentor and a partner is property and property ownership. And at our last event in February, we spoke about doing a joint venture, which he would fund the majority of the capital for property, an investment property, and then who was interested in getting involved, they could also put in a minimum of like £500 to be part of this venture, so to put towards having a property. So it's like your step towards a property ladder. So that is coming this summer. We will be having an event for that, just with all the information that you need and the kind of property and investment property it will be in, what's required, what you'll get out of it, etc. So look out for those details. That will be our next event. We've got the No Bravado link coming up. You know, people messaging me about that all the time. Someone messaged me today and said, because I had a picture up of food, and said, oh, I hope you're bringing that to the No Bravado link up. I didn't even know they knew about it. I said, no, I will not be cooking for the No Bravado link up. Thank you very much. So
no, we've got to do this No Bravado link up, man. When are we doing it? When are we doing it?
What are we saying?
August? Are we committed on film?
Yeah, we're committed on film.
We're going to commit live.
August!
But Cupcakes and Cocktails is what? No, Cupcakes and Cocktails is in July.
So yeah, Cupcakes and Cocktails is coming 3rd of July. Diva Choice.
Yeah, we're going to be showcasing my new collection that I've been working very hard on over the last few months. Corona's not made it easy to develop stuff and to, you know, get this new line popping, but it is finally here. One of the pieces I'm wearing today, but it's very, is the word Afrocentric?
You could say that.
Yeah.
You could say that.
I want to call it the Queen Collection or something along those lines, because I think it's very regal and royal. It's made up of anks and just statement golds and silvers, and we're again launching a new collection at Cupcakes and Cocktails. So I've got a stockist that is based on Frontier Road. So anyone who doesn't know me who's watching, I have a company called Diva Choice, and we specialize in statement fashion jewelry and swimwear, and we will be moving into fashion at some point. Diva Choice is an online boutique, and you can find us at www.divachoice.co.uk or on Frontier Road at the Designer Collective or Fashion Capital online. If you go to Insta and type Fashion Capital, you can find all of their bits. But they're based at 113 to 115 Frontier Road, and that's where you'll find some of your Diva Choice treats there as well. So if you're local, stop by, see us at the Designer Collective. We're also going to be hosting our favorite event, because our crew, we like to sip, we like a little cocktail, and we like to shop. So we've combined all three. So we're having our sip and shop event on the 3rd of July called Cupcakes and Cocktails. This event's sponsored by Savvy Cakes and Bakes, and hopefully the Blazer we'll throw in some of their blaze pops. But we'll work on that. Shanties, if you're watching, we want some of your delicious blaze pops for this event as well. Yeah, so it's sponsored by Savvy Cakes and Bakes. Music is going to be by the one and only WJ Good Groove, and we've got an Eventbrite page up, so I'll shoot the link in the chat when we're done. Where we've got vouchers, discount vouchers that will give you £5 off if you spend more than £30, but you have to register on Eventbrite to grab that. We're going to be doing competitions and revealing different pieces throughout the month. So 3rd of July, save the date. It's from 12 p.m. till 5 p.m. and we're hoping to see some of you beautiful divas.
It'll be great to see you guys there.
And then we'll do our No Bravado link up after that.
Yeah. We always got to do a dance. We always got to do a shoulder dance. Stupidness.
But yeah. You know, you bring out this to me, it's your fault. But yeah, always a pleasure, my darling.
Yes.
But yeah, let's not do a 3-4 hour show today. It's ridiculous. Let's wrap it up today.
And I'm hungry.
Yeah, me
as
too.
Carl would say.
Me too. And I'm hot as hell, so I need to put on my fan. And the noise in the background just wouldn't have been the one. So yeah, let me just strip off and put my fan on.
Yeah. Oh, lovely.
But I'll call you anyway.
All right. See you
Love
later.
you to bits, babe.
Oh, you too. Bye-bye. Bye. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.